Alex Pereira is walking into heavyweight like a man who looked at 2 UFC divisions, checked the locks, tested the walls, and decided the whole building belonged to him. Middleweight took it. Light heavyweight took that too. And now heavyweight is sitting there at the end of the hallway with the lights flickering, the floorboards creaking, and Ciryl Gane standing in the doorway looking calm, which honestly is usually worse. Because this is not just another Alex Pereira fight. This is the kind of fight where legacy starts flirting with danger, and danger starts asking for a dance. Pereira is trying to do something nobody in UFC history has done before. 3 divisions, 3 belts, a career arc so wild that if you wrote it as fiction, people would say the character needed to be toned down. But heavyweight is not fiction. Heavyweight is the division where one mistake can take a perfectly reasonable game plan and throw it through a closed window. And that is what makes this matchup so interesting. Ciryl Gane may not be the heavyweight people panic about first. He is not the wrestler who grabs your hips and turns the fight into unpaid farm labor. He is not the giant mauler who walks forward like a refrigerator with unresolved childhood issues. But that might be exactly why this fight is dangerous. Gane is a different kind of problem. He moves, he resets, he makes you miss by just enough. He can win boring minutes, and boring minutes become very dangerous when the other guy is carrying extra weight, chasing history, and trying to land something that could be heard from 3 zip codes away. And that is the real question here. Not whether Alex Pereira has power. Of course he has power. That man hits like bad news with a passport. The question is whether that power works the same way at heavyweight. At heavyweight, power is not rare. Power is the cover charge. Everybody in that room can crack. The difference is who can still think clearly when the air gets heavy, the feet get slower, the clinches cost more, and the other man refuses to stand exactly where you need him. So today, we are getting into the real fight beneath the fight. Not just Pereira moving up, not just Gane trying to stop history, but the strategy, the traps, and the little details that could decide whether Alex Pereira becomes something close to mythical, or whether Ciryl Gane reminds everyone that heavyweight does not care about your highlight reel. Let's get into it. First, we have to talk about what Pereira is really chasing here. Because this is bigger than one belt. This is legacy math. Pereira has already done more in MMA than most fighters could do in 3 careers. He came into the UFC with that kickboxing reputation, and usually when high-level strikers cross over into MMA, people immediately ask the same questions. Can he wrestle? Can he grapple? Can he get off the fence? Can he survive when someone stops being polite and starts grabbing legs? Those questions were fair. But Pereira did something very few fighters do. He answered enough of them while still making people terrified of the one thing everybody already knew was coming: the left hook, the calf kicks, the timing, the cold, unpleasant patience. He does not fight like a man in a rush. He fights like a man who knows the bill is coming and does not need to raise his voice about it. That is what makes him different. Plenty of fighters hit hard. Pereira understands when you are available to be hit. That is a completely different skill. Some guys throw power and hope. Pereira sets appointments for a beat later. He makes you think about the low kick, then suddenly the left hand is arriving with all the warmth of an eviction notice. And when fighters face him, you can see it. They are not just fighting Alex Pereira. They are fighting the idea of Alex Pereira. They know the highlight reel. They know the sound a clean shot makes. They know one bad read can turn them into a thumbnail with red arrows and somebody's shocked face in the corner. But heavyweight changes that. Not completely. He still has a mystique, but it changes it enough. At middleweight and light heavyweight, Pereira's size and power carried a certain psychological weight. He was not just dangerous, He felt like the bigger danger in the room. At heavyweight, that dynamic gets complicated. Because heavyweight is the neighborhood where everybody has bad intentions. You do not walk into heavyweight and intimidate people just because you can punch. These men have been hit by large humans for a living. They have made peace with terrible ideas. So yes, Pereira's power is still real. But at heavyweight, power alone does not make you special. It gets you in the door. After that, the questions get meaner. Can you still move like yourself? Can you still reset fast enough? Can you keep your reactions sharp when the other guy is 245, 250, 260 pounds, and every clinch feels like carrying furniture up wet stairs? That is the part people sometimes skip. They look at Pereira bigger in training footage and say, he looks terrifying. And sure, he does. But training footage is supposed to look terrifying. That is the whole business model. Nobody uploads the part where someone is tired, sweaty, annoyed, and wondering why their lungs are speaking to an attorney. The real question is not whether Pereira can weigh in as a heavyweight. The real question is whether he can fight like Alex Pereira at heavyweight. Because added size is not free. Muscle comes with trade-off. Sometimes it shows up in round 2 when the shoulders get heavy. Sometimes it shows up after 3 missed entries. Sometimes it shows up when a fighter still has the first explosion, but the 3rd and 4th ones start looking like they need permission from accounting. And that is why Ciryl Gane is such an interesting test. Because Gane does not need to take Pereira down to make that weight matter. He can make him move. He can make him turn. He can make him reset. He can make him miss. And missing at heavyweight is expensive. A missed power shot is not just nothing. It costs balance. It costs breath. It costs confidence. It gives the other man information. And if you miss while chasing a mover, now you are not just fighting the opponent. You are fighting impatience. That is where Gane becomes a problem. Ciryl Gane is a strange heavyweight, and that is a compliment. Most heavyweights make you feel their size in obvious ways. They walk forward, they lean on you, they grab, they make the fight physical, they turn the cage into a very expensive elevator with no buttons. Gane makes you feel his size by not being where a heavyweight is supposed to be. He moves like a big man who missed the memo. He bounces, he circles, he resets, he throws kicks from range, he touches the body, he jabs from awkward distances. He can win a minute without looking like he is doing much, which is deeply irritating if you are the person trying to hit him. And irritation matters. Annoying wins fights. That sounds funny, but it is true. Annoying breaks rhythm. Annoying makes dangerous fighters rush. Annoying makes someone who is usually patient start thinking, fine, I'll just force it. And the moment a puncher starts forcing it, the feet get wider, the shoulders get tighter, and the counters get later. At heavyweight, a little later can become a very quiet room. That is the Gane problem. He does not have to be perfect. He just has to make Pereira less comfortable than Pereira wants to be. He has to deny him clean reads. Pereira wants reactions. A step, a lean, a flinch, a hand drop, a lazy exit, a repeated pattern. That is the food source. Gane cannot feed him for free. He cannot exit the same way over and over. He cannot admire his own work. He cannot land a jab and hang around like he is waiting for applause. That is how your evening gets turned into educational content. Gane has to touch and leave, score and angle, kick and reset. Make Pereira start over again and again and again. And if he can do that, the fight changes. Because then Pereira is no longer the man setting traps. He becomes the man trying to find one. And there is a big difference between pressuring and chasing. Pressure cuts the cage. Chasing follows the target. Pressure makes the other fighter choose between bad options. Chasing lets the other fighter decide where the next exchange happens. That distinction might decide this fight. If Pereira follows Gane, he could spend long stretches walking into empty space, resetting his feet, and trying to line up a shot that keeps moving away from him. But if Pereira cuts the cage, now Gane has to make decisions near the fence. And that is where Pereira becomes terrifying. In open space, Gane can give ground. Near the fence, he has to pick a door. Left, right, clinch, shell, counter, kick, reset. And Pereira only needs one wrong door. That is why the calf kick is so important here. Pereira cannot just headhunt. If he goes upstairs too early, Gane can make him miss, circle away, and turn this into a long-range fight where Alex spends too much time trying to close distance against a bigger man who refuses to cooperate. The leg kicks are not just damage. They are a leash. They slow the exits. They shorten the cage. They make a mobile heavyweight less mobile. And once Gane's feet get even a little less clean, the whole fight starts changing shape. A fighter like Gane needs the exit. He needs that half step, that bounce, that angle, that ability to score without being trapped in the return fire. If Pereira can take even 10% of that away with calf kicks, body work, and disciplined pressure, then suddenly, Gane is not a ghost anymore. He is a man standing in front of Alex Pereira. And that is not where most people want to stand. But getting there is the hard part. Pereira has to be patient. That sounds simple, but patience gets harder when the stakes are this big. Because this is not just a heavyweight debut. This is history sitting in front of him, blinking in neon. And when history is that close, fighters sometimes start reaching for the moment before they have earned the position. That is the trap. Pereira cannot fall in love with the finish before he builds the conditions for it. He has to make Gane carry consequences. Kick the leg when Gane exits. Touch the body when Gane circles. Step across instead of following. Cut the cage in small pieces. Do not rush the left hand. Do not chase the highlight. Let the fight narrow. The most dangerous version of Pereira is not the one swinging big. It is the one making tiny adjustments while looking calm. That is when the mood changes. You see the opponent start to hesitate. The exits get less confident. The hands start reacting to things that have not been thrown yet. The lead leg gets heavy. The shoulders tighten. That is when Pereira starts reading the room. And once he starts reading the room, somebody usually needs a chair. But Gane has tools to stop that rhythm from forming. For him, the game plan is not complicated. It is just difficult. There is a difference. He has to stay disciplined without becoming passive. He has to move without running. He has to score without lingering. He has to make Pereira lead, but not give him easy counters. He has to touch the body, stab the front kick, jab to the chest, attack the legs when available, and constantly make Pereira reset his stance. The jab to the chest could matter here, not because it is flashy. Nobody makes a highlight reel called Greatest Chest Jabs in UFC History unless the algorithm has completely given up on us. But that strike can disrupt rhythm. It can keep Pereira from setting his feet. It can mark distance without overcommitting. It can make the bigger striker think twice about stepping in clean. Gane does not need every shot to hurt Pereira. He needs enough of them to interrupt him. That is the theme. Interrupt the rhythm. Steal the setup. Make the dangerous man start over. And he should clinch sometimes too. Not because Gane needs to become a wrestling machine overnight. Let's not get carried away and start handing him a Dagestani passport. But short clinch moments can matter. A collar tie here, an underhook battle there, a shoulder in the chest, a reset against the fence. Those moments make Pereira carry weight. They interrupt the striking rhythm. They make the fight feel less clean. And if Pereira starts thinking about balance, frames, underhooks, and exits, he is not purely thinking about setting traps with his hands and feet. You need to give Pereira chores. That is the best way to put it. Do not let him stand there in a clean striking match with all his weapons neatly arranged on the table. Make him move furniture. Make him turn. Make him defend position. Make him breathe through uncomfortable moments. Because comfortable Pereira is terrifying. Comfortable Pereira starts looking like he already knows what you are going to do next. And once he knows, the fight starts feeling less like competition and more like paperwork. Gane has his own danger though, because sometimes Gane can get a little too comfortable winning minutes. He can move, score, reset, and look like he is managing the fight beautifully. Then suddenly the pressure is still there. The opponent has not gone away. The fence is closer than he thought. The same exit appears twice. The lead leg gets touched again, and now the margin for error gets thin. Against Pereira, winning minutes is good. Surviving moments is mandatory. That is the balance. Gane can be ahead for 12 minutes and still be one bad habit away from disaster. That is why this fight has such a strange tension. Pereira may not need many moments. Gane may need a lot of clean minutes. That does not mean Gane cannot win. He absolutely can. But it means his focus has to be sharp for every second he is in range. No lazy exits. No backing straight up with the chin high. No kicking and leaving the leg hanging. No circling the same direction every time. No admiring clean work, because Pereira does not need you to fall apart. He just needs you to repeat yourself. That is one of the cruelest things about his style. Some fighters overwhelm you. Pereira notices you. And sometimes being noticed is worse, because by the time you realize he has seen the habit, the receipt is already printing. Now let's talk about the weight again, because this is where a lot of people are going to argue. And honestly, they should. This is one of the most interesting parts of the fight. Pereira getting bigger looks scary. There is no reason to pretend otherwise. A bigger Alex Pereira is not exactly the sort of thing you want to see walking toward you unless you are selling life insurance. But bigger is not automatically better, especially against Gane. Against a slow, stationary heavyweight, maybe the extra size feels like pure benefit. More strength, more impact, more physicality in the clinch. But against a mover, that weight has to travel. It has to turn. It has to reset. It has to chase angles. And if Gane makes Pereira move more than he wants, the weight becomes part of the fight. Not immediately, maybe not in round one, but over time. That is where the truth usually shows up. Round one can lie. Round one is fresh legs, full gas tank, clean intentions. Round three tells on people. Round three tells you whether the stance is still sharp, whether the counters are still quick, whether the breathing is calm, whether the fighter is still patient or starting to negotiate with fatigue. That is why round three may be the truth serum in this fight. If Pereira still looks balanced and dangerous in round three, if he is still kicking hard, still cutting the cage, still making Gane react, then Gane is in trouble. Because that means the heavyweight version of Pereira did not lose the things that made him special. But if Gane has made him chase, miss, reset, and carry that new size around the cage, then the fight starts tilting. Not because Pereira suddenly becomes harmless. He never becomes harmless. That is the problem. But he might become less precise, and less precise against Ciryl Gane may not be enough. So what should people watch for? First, watch Gane's lead leg. If Pereira starts landing calf kicks early, especially as Gane exits, that is not just a strike. That is a warning light. A mobile heavyweight with a compromised lead leg becomes a lot more ordinary. Still dangerous, still skilled, but less ghost, more man. Second, watch Pereira's feet after he misses. If he misses and stays balanced, fine. That means he is still in control of his entries. But if he misses and has to take big resets, if his stance gets stretched, if he starts reaching with his upper body instead of stepping into position, that tells you Gane is making him chase. Third, watch the fence. The fence is the lie detector. If Gane can keep this in open space, he can make the fight look clean. If Pereira can consistently put him near the black line, the danger goes way up, because Pereira does not need a long combination there. He needs one bad defensive choice. Fourth, watch the clinch. Not because this is suddenly going to become a wrestling clinic, but because even short clinch exchanges can steal rhythm and make Pereira carry heavyweight stress. That matters. Fifth, watch the mood. That sounds vague, but fight people know what that means. There's a moment in some Pereira fights where the opponent's body language changes. They are still fighting, they are still dangerous, but they start reacting before they need to. They start seeing ghosts. The feints get bigger reactions, the exits get messier, the legs stop looking certain. If that happens to Gane, the fight is entering Pereira's weather. And Pereira's weather is bad for property values. But if Gane stays calm, keeps touching, keeps moving, keeps making Pereira start over, then suddenly Alex is the one being asked questions. That is what makes this matchup so good, and why an old gym rat like me loves this kind of fight. It is not simply power versus movement. That is too easy. It is control versus denial. Pereira wants to control reactions. Gane wants to deny clean reads. Pereira wants to narrow the fight. Gane wants to keep it wide. Pereira wants to make Gane choose under pressure. Gane wants to keep choosing before the pressure arrives. That is the chess match underneath the violence. And yes, calling heavyweight chess always feels a little strange because the pieces weigh 250 pounds and can legally kick each other in the head. But that is what this is. A fight about space, a fight about timing, a fight about who gets to decide where the dangerous moments happen. If Pereira wins, it probably looks sudden. Maybe not early, but sudden. That is different. He may spend minutes collecting information. Maybe Gane is moving well. Maybe the fight looks competitive. Maybe people online are already typing, Pereira looks slow, because patience is illegal on social media. Then one calf kick lands clean. One exit gets cut off. One left hand grazes instead of misses. One exchange near the fence makes Gane choose the wrong door. And suddenly, the entire fight changes. That is Pereira's gift. He can make a competitive fight look like it was always headed toward disaster. If Gane wins, it probably looks frustrating. Jabs, body kicks, movement, resets, small clinches, not enough clean Pereira moments. A fight where Alex remains dangerous the whole time, but never fully comfortable. Where the threat is always there, but Gane keeps moving the finish line. That is the fight Gane wants. Not a war, not a firefight, not a pride contest. He wants a technical argument where Pereira keeps trying to land the sentence-ending punch and Gane keeps changing the subject. And that may not be the most emotionally satisfying style for fans who want someone launched into orbit by round 2. But winning is not always romantic. Sometimes it is disciplined, annoying, and deeply unpleasant to watch if you are rooting for the knockout. That is Gane's lane. Make Pereira work for everything. Make the power carry its own weight. Make history chase him. And that is really the whole story. Alex Pereira is chasing greatness. Ciryl Gane is trying to make greatness chase footwork. Somewhere in the middle, heavyweight is waiting to see which truth shows up first. Does Pereira's power translate cleanly? Or does the division expose the cost of moving up? Does Gane's movement frustrate him? Or does Pereira slowly take the exits away? Does the added weight make Alex more dangerous? Or does it make the long fight harder? That is why this matchup works. Because both sides have a real path, both sides have real danger, and both sides have a trap waiting if they get too comfortable. For Pereira, the trap is chasing the finish before he builds the position. For Gane, the trap is thinking clean minutes are enough when one dirty moment can ruin everything. That, my friends, is heavyweight. Heavyweight is not always fair, and it is not always patient. Heavyweight does not care how good your first 10 minutes looked if the 11th minute ends with you staring at the lights, wondering why the referee suddenly has 3 heads. So if Pereira pulls this off, we are not just talking about another title win. We are talking about one of the wildest rises this sport has ever seen. Middleweight champion, light heavyweight champion, heavyweight champion. That is not a career. That is a museum exhibit with hand wraps. But if Gane stops him, then heavyweight makes its point again. You do not just bring power into this division and assume the room belongs to you. You have to prove it against size, against movement, against fatigue, against patience, against a man who does not care about your mythology and is more than happy to make your highlight reel wait outside. That is what Ciryl Gane represents here. Not just an opponent, a very specific inconvenience. The kind of fighter who can make a dangerous man look ordinary if the dangerous man gets impatient. But Alex Pereira is not ordinary, and that is the problem for Gane. Because Gane can do almost everything right and still be one repeated exit away from history landing on his chin. That is the tension. That is the fight. Alex Pereira is trying to become something this sport has never seen. Ciryl Gane is trying to remind him that heavyweight is not a promotion. It is a different tax bracket for consequences. And when that cage door closes, all the mythology, all the training footage, all the legacy talk, all the predictions, all the comment section confidence goes quiet. Then it is just two men, bad intentions, and a whole lot of truth waiting in the small details. Watch the feet, watch the exits, watch the fence, watch round 3. Because this fight may not be decided by who looks scarier, it may be decided by who makes the other man uncomfortable first. And in heavyweight, uncomfortable can become unconscious in a hurry. Thanks for joining us, and stay tuned to the channel for the full post-fight breakdown. For all who have waited, I have a new Dakota Ditch of a video coming soon. Stay tuned. Also, a special shout out to our champion member of the month, Daniel O'Brien. Thanks for the support, my friend. I'm Reggie Cross. This is Behind the Lines. If you're feeling the vibe, hit that subscribe. And remember, hype fades, legacy don't. Peace. 745 with